Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Wednesday, October 30th, 2002. The City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. here in City Hall. Meetings are open to the public, and we invite you to join us. For those of you unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live from home on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live from home via webcast on the city's homepage or heard via council phone. We are just shy of a quorum at this time. It is 10:15 a.m., but we do have one presentation scheduled for today. Before beginning with today's agenda, the chair recognizes Councilmember Pacheco.
Cool. Mount Washington. Good morning, colleagues, Mr. President, Council President. I just wanted to bring forward the Roosevelt High School football team. As you know, we've been talking about, good morning, Mr. Burnson, Roosevelt High alum, class of 68, was that right? I'm sorry, was it 48? Summer of 48, right? Aren't you class of 48? 1848. No. Let me tell you that we are here to give them a certificate of friendship, but as you know, we've been talking about the City of Los Angeles and Boyle Heights and Roosevelt participating in the East LA Classic, which is this weekend. And as you know, originally the games were on the east side at either one of the football team's schools. It grew out of their home fields to East Los Angeles Community College. At some point, it outgrew the East LA Community College, which held about 20,000 people. And it's now being played at the Los Angeles Coliseum, where they expect 30,000 participants, fans. Both sides are very passionate about seeing them win, but I wanted to bring up the football team. We have 45 students and 20 staff members who comprise the hardworking Roosevelt High School football team. This year is the 30th annual. The school rivalry began in the fall of 1926 and followed with an annual football game between the schools that are only 3 miles apart in East Los Angeles. The annual game was named the East LA Classic in 1972 by Roosevelt coach Al Chavez, Garfield coach Vic Loya, publicity director and announcer Ted Davis. We want to bring up the football team. Let's come on up, guys. So at first, I want to present to their coach a certificate of friendship is hereby presented to Roosevelt High School football coach by the Los Angeles City Council on behalf of the residents of Boyle Heights. Congratulations and good luck this Friday.
Thank you very much.
And also a certificate of friendship and a good luck wishes to the entire football team. from the Los Angeles City Council and on behalf of the residents of Boyle Heights, with warmest wishes and hopes that the East LA Classic will be a success and a time for growth and friendship between Roosevelt High School and Garfield High School. On behalf of the City of Los Angeles, I present this to the entire Roosevelt High School football team.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Labange.
I just want to congratulate Mr. Pacheco for bringing these great students from Roosevelt down. You look at their faces, you look at their eyes, they look like great students, which is the most important thing, and great athletes. And I congratulate the coach and his staff for the work they do. I follow the city football very closely, and I'm proud to see when a team does well. And you look like a great team, and I wish you all the luck in the world to work hard and enjoy the high school experience, because you'll never, it happens real fast. How many more games you got in the league? 4 more games?
3 more counting this one.
Okay, so it's very quick, so enjoy each one and do well in school. And then if you could continue your education, whether at community college or state college or university, do that. There's nothing better than what you're doing now, and the camaraderie. You'll remember this for your lifetime. Work hard, and thank the band and the drill team for all the work they do, help cheering you on. Good luck, Rough Riders.
Thank you.
Let me present Coach Jose Casagran, who would like to say a few words on behalf of the football team and Roosevelt High School.
First of all, I want to thank you all. This is a beautiful certificate. So is the other one, and I feel very gracious and honored for this opportunity. It's great to see an alumni here as part of the City Council. It's tremendous. It's a great example for them. I want to thank Nick Pacheco in particular for his undying support for our team and help. He's been tremendous. So we brought him a jersey with District 14, and hopefully he'll be proud to wear it this Friday night at the Coliseum on the winning side. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Let me have a Tom Labange moment here. Let me get this right.
Hey, Coach. Coach, did you bring any pads to go with that jersey?
The pants. Oh yeah. There you go.
And that's it.
There you go. All we need is the football, huh, Tom?
I got one upstairs.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Pacheco.
Let's go that way.
Congratulations.
Thank you. More, everyone.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Brinson, Galanter, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Holden, Labange, Miskowski, Pacheco, Perry, Reyes, Whitley, Thomas, Weiss, Zine, Padilla, 11 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Miskowski moves and Ms. Hahn seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Weiss moves and Mr. Reyes seconds.
Before beginning the regular agenda, there's a request to continue item number 11 by Councilmember Garcetti for 2 weeks, and that would be to November 13th, which is the off-site meeting.
Item number 11.
Yes, Mr. President.
Request to continue. Councilmember Garcetti, you have a request to continue item number 11. November 13th, the City Council will be meeting outside of City Hall that evening. If it's a date-sensitive item, we can properly agendize that. If you need a public hearing held here in City Hall, we may want to choose a different date. Okay, then let's make that request to November 15th, which is a Friday. Is there any objection to that continuance? Seeing none, item 11 is continued. Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to continue items 2 and 3 to November 6th, please.
Request to continue items 2 and 3, members, to November 6th. That would be 1 week from today. Seeing no objection, so ordered. Madam Clerk?
On the regular agenda, there are several commissioners to confirm. Item number 6 is confirmation of Dennis M. O'Sullivan to the LA Homeless Services Authority, and a public hearing has been held in committee.
If Mr. O'Sullivan can come forward at this time, members, we have a report and recommendation to approve this commission nominee. Members wishing to be heard, beginning with Ms. Gruel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I've had the pleasure of working with Dennis, and he came before our Housing and Community Development Committee this last week. He is someone who has expertise to serve on the LA Homeless Service Authority and was willing enough even to not receive any money to do this as far as his organization. He's a dedicated individual who has experience on the homeless issue and dealing with some of the challenges with individuals who have been drug addicted or alcohol or mental illness, et cetera. So his expertise is going to be incredibly useful on the LA Homeless Service Authority, and he's a wonderful Valley resident. So we're pleased that you're here today, and encourage all of my colleagues, which I know there were, to support your appointment today and look forward to working with you in the future. And I know we had a lot of issue items we talked about in working with the LA Homeless Service Authority to see how we can even bring more resources to this issue and to make sure that all levels of government are stepping up to the plate. So look forward to working with you, and glad you're willing to serve the city. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruhl. Other members wishing to be heard? Seeing none, members, I'll exercise a point of personal privilege just to add that Mr. O'Sullivan has been a great community leader throughout the Northeast Valley, and not only brings an expertise to this particular capacity, but as he, on occasion, and very passionately shares some personal experience and perspective to the issues of homelessness and social services throughout the Valley and throughout the city. So he's going to be a great member of this body. Madam Clerk, please open the roll on confirmation. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Congratulations. Thank you
Mr.
for your
President.
service.
Thank you, City Council.
Forthwith, please. Next item.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 18 is confirmation of Alan Arkatov to the Commission on Children, Youth, and Their Families. Arts, Health, and Humanities Committee waived consideration of this item, and public hearing has not been held.
Now, Mr. Arkatov, last time you were here, you brought your kids with you.
I was hoping you wouldn't remember, Mr. President.
How can I forget?
They have a school day today, so I kept them in school.
Again, members, public hearing has been held. We have a report and recommendation for approval. No, we don't. So we need a motion from the floor. I do not have cards on this item, so we shall deem the public hearing satisfied. Chair recognizes Mr. Weiss, followed by Mr. Labange.
Before I make the motion, Mr. President, it seems like you're here every couple of weeks. Are you on like a special probationary period as a commissioner that we should be aware of?
You're doing the good work of the city,
Okay.
Councilman.
I will make the motion to reapprove your nomination. And we were just talking a moment ago about the incredible things that you're doing at this commission. You're really revitalizing a commission, and I think it would be good for all of us if you could just take a moment or two to talk about the new direction that you're charting as the new president of this commission, so we can know about what you're doing and about what your plans are.
Thank you. Very quickly, I know you have other important items today. We are working with the mayor and this council to connect the dots, if you will, everything from getting the data to the individual council people, working with the Prop 10 folks to make sure that early childhood becomes an important part of the city legacy, working with city departments to make sure that each of the city departments is a child, youth, and family-friendly department. So that's our mission. It's a just cause, and we'll continue to do the good work for you.
Well, that's great. I know we also have some new dynamic commissioners who are coming on the pike soon. We look forward to confirming them, and we look forward to hearing from you periodically about the great work you're doing. So I encourage an aye vote on this one, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you. I appreciate, and I second the motion of Mr. Weiss and Alan. I thank you for your service. Thank you for the report. And you had Kids Day on Saturday.
We
and,
did.
That worked real well, and people enjoyed it. And every day's Kids Day in LA if you're leading the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Other members wishing to be heard on the confirmation of Mr. Arkatov? Ms. Gruhl.
Well, since you didn't mention what his kid said last time, I think it was the words when we asked him, your son, what do you think of your dad? And he said, he's crazy. And so you fit right in to the city of Los Angeles with your son, but I knew you thought no one would mention it. But I know, Alan, you've been working and trying hard to bring back, I think, the issue of child care and youth issues to the forefront in the city of Los Angeles. And I was looking the other day that the last time we did our child care policy in the city of Los Angeles was when I was still here in 1987. So I'm hopefully looking forward to working with you and the rest of the members and the department to revisit that. A lot's changed since since 1987. We need to bring it back up to the forefront of an important issue in Los Angeles at all levels. So I agree with, as Mr. Weiss said, we feel like we have seen you every couple of months, but we hope to see you here again when we're bringing some real substantive items about addressing issues of children, youth, and family in the city of Los Angeles. So as I said to Dennis, we're very appreciative of your commitment to the city and your willingness to spend the time to deal with some real critical issues. So just want to add my support to your nomination, and please bring your kids next time.
Thank you, Councilmember. And again, I would say the work of this commission is really going to be as good as what this council can do working with this commission and giving us the tools to get the job done. But we thank you, and Councilmember Hahn and her committee, and Councilman Weiss and his committee. We look forward to continuing to work with you, Mr. President.
Mr. Rudy Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. I suspect the matter that credentials our nominee in part is that of progeny, but we won't go into much detail in that regard. We just simply rise to acknowledge that he's a long-term civic activist leader, has tried to distinguish himself in a number of ways, not the least of which it would be to creatively think through ways to make our city a better one. I think highly of him for his interest in this particular commission where, as would be the case with Alan Architoff, he would look toward the future and make his investment there. And there is no commission in our city that's better situated to do that than that of children, youth, and their families. And so I simply rise to acknowledge this as a nomination that should prove to be an asset and wish to wholly be supportive of it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Other members wishing to be heard? Seeing none, I'm going to refrain here, Alan. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll on confirmation? Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, council members.
Thank you for your ongoing service to the city. Forthwith on this matter as well, please. Next item.
Item number 1 is an item noticed for public hearing. Planning Land Use Management Committee report has been submitted and I believe has been distributed to the council members.
And I do have a card on this item, so let's call this matter special. Next items.
Next items, items 4 and 5 are also public hearing items, and there are ordinances on both files.
And I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on items 4 and 5, so we shall deem the public hearings open and closed. Members wishing to call items 4 or 5 special? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items for which public hearings have been held, items 7 through 17, and item 11 has already been acted upon.
Items 7 through 17 now before us. Public hearings haven't been held. Motions from the floor would be required to reopen the public hearings. Members wishing to call any items special. Mr. Holden.
17.
Items 7 and 17, called special by Mr. Holden. Any other specials?
16.
16, called special by Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Garcetti?
15.
15, called special by Mr. Garcetti. Any other specials? Seeing none, on the balance of the items, Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items for which public hearings have not been held, items 19 through 43.
I have cards on items 35, 36, and 40. Let's call those matters special. On the balance of the items, I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council, so we shall deem those public hearings satisfied. Members wishing to call any additional specials? Additional special items? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 44 is the closed session. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Let's hold closed session items on the desk.
On the continued agenda, items 45 through 47 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Members, public hearings have been held on items 45 through 47. A motion from the floor would be required to reopen the public hearings. Members wishing to call any other specials? Mr. Holden?
45, 46, 47.
Mr. Holden calls items 45, 46, and 47 special. Madam Clerk, next item.
Going back to the items called special, item number 1 was called special for a card from the public.
Council calls forward at this time Mr. Jerry Whirling. Mr. Whirling, from the microphone there at the podium, please.
Okay, how much time do I have?
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. This hotel structure is against the law, a 3-story maximum in the neighborhood. And we voted all these people in to make sure that it didn't go up, that they didn't gentrify the neighborhood. And they all, on their platform, they came in, we voted them in for that purpose. And then they all went against what their platform was and sold out to big business and builders. When I break the law, I go to jail. They get large campaign contributions. The hotel is 6 stories now, and they want to go up to 7th story. But in the lies in the writing say they want to add a 4th story. They have 2 stories of parking above ground level, 3 stories of hotel rooms, and 3 structures on the roof and a facade that gives it the 6th story, a penthouse and other structures. There's no parking for visitors in the area at all. If you want to have a visitor, you have to park 6 blocks away from the beach and walk 6 blocks. $15 is a parking fee that you'll pay every time you come. Well, weekdays in the winter, it's $5 sometimes. The conference room in the hotel, where they have banquets, buffet-style banquets, accommodates 500 people daily, and nobody has a place to park. There's no parking scheduled for extra parking scheduled for the extra story on the hotel. I live right next door to the hotel, and the hotel casts a shadow on my sun deck. An extra story would block the sun for an extra hour or 2, maybe more. All I want to get is some sun on my face, but poor people can't afford that. You want to make a millionaire a billionaire at the expense of the people. The people decided this a long time ago, that they wanted no more than 3 stories anywhere in that neighborhood, on the beach or anywhere. And they got 6 now, and they want to go 7, and we don't need no skyscrapers in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. This closes public comment on this item. Turning now to council discussion, I have the chair of the committee, Mr. Reyes, and the council member of the district, Ms. Misikowski. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, this is one of those projects in which it started in one district and ended up in another. But in both instances, what we heard in committee is a very strong voice in supporting this project because of all the economic and community benefits that it has from the bigger picture. And what was very significant was that there was a substantiated evidence of parking that was available that could add to the economic dynamic of Venice, which is an international destination for this region. And so it was one of those issues that there were strong arguments on both sides, but it was very clear to the chair that what weighed out was the bigger picture, the bigger benefit, especially when you had people who live right across the street supporting the project, especially when you had folks that were adjacent and those that had the kinds of businesses that felt this would support Venice in the long run, knowing that we need to bear down and get ready for tourists who would like to have a place to stay right at the beach. So I applaud the community for hanging in there, knowing that this was a difficult project, but we strongly felt that given the stewardship shown by both council offices, that we were trying our best to put forth a project that was healthy for the area as well as the neighbors. Thank you.
Ms. Misikowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to thank the chair and the committee in hearing this yesterday, the members of the community who came out on both sides, and also Councilwoman Galanter, because this is, as Mr. Reyes said, a case that started in processing when this was CD6 and then is completing the processing now. But constant throughout was a sense of participation in the community. There is and had been a community police advisory council that was in place, and they are staying in place and evolving under the new Venice Grassroots Neighborhood Council. The chair of that CPAC was at committee yesterday and has been supportive of this, as has the CPAC entirely. This is not a 7-story hotel. There are 2 stories of parking underground. We never count those as stories when they are below ground. It is now a 4-story building. It is adding a 5th floor within an area where there is now a pitched roof. So although there will be some overall increase in height, it is not a brand new building that is in gross violation of the specific plan. It is going through the process to get and receive a specific plan exception. That is what we are confirming today. There are findings that were made. It was unanimously endorsed by the Area Planning Commission, the local Area Planning Commission, which looked at it. And the reason they supported it, and I think a reason a lot of the community supported it, is this has been a hotel that has been in existence since 1975 at least as a family-owned and operated hotel. It is not a big mega hotel. It is not a big hotel that has a conference center. It does have a community room. It is also one of the in fact, the only moderately priced hotel in the Venice community, essentially right on the adjacency to the beach. It is family-owned and operated. It is a visitor-serving, low, moderately priced hotel. It is the only significant visiting serving hotel with amenities. They are also making an accommodation that when the hotel is not full, those people who want to go to the beach, can't find parking, can use this facility, the parking in this facility. So I think all around it's a substantial improvement. It is consistent with the specific plan in its concept of visitor-serving retail visiting service amenities, and I think for that reason it was unanimously endorsed by the CPAC, by the Area Planning Commission, and by the Planning and Land Use Management Committee yesterday. So I ask that the Council adopt this recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Misikowski. Other members wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please. Let's end that matter forthwith.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 7 was called special by Council Member Holden.
Mr. Holden. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we begin with item number 7, Ms. Hahn does have a quick introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, let's all welcome a very important group of visitors to our City Council chambers this morning. We have 54 people from STEP, which stands for Steps to Exciting Places. And they stepped into the right place here because this is certainly an exciting place to be. They come from down in my area, the San Pedro area, the Palos Verdes area, and the Torrance area. And we have their chaperones, Jean Sipos, and I love this name, Bonnie Delight. Welcome to our chambers. Have a great, exciting time here today, and we wish you well, and thanks for visiting us. Step.
Thank you for your visit. Enjoy your day here at City Hall. Returning now to item number 7, Mr. Holden.
Mr. President, remember, this is a very detailed and intricate report as relates to our budget and reserve funds, and I would respectfully request that Mr. Fuchioka give us a report in detail specifically outlining what was done here and what the shortfall is that's anticipated, because we'll be out of compliance of the 2% in reserve funds, something less than that, and why we have the shortfall, what departments are contributing to that shortfall, etc. Thank you, Mr. President.
Actually, today we have two reports before your council. The first report, agenda item number 7, deals with the reserve fund. The second report, agenda item number 45, deals with our first financial status report. The latter, the first financial status report, which I'll be speaking to later on today's agenda, will address one of the concerns identified by Councilman Holden, is that given the potential problems we've identified at this point in the budget year, if all those problems would have to become true, we would end the year with a reserve of 1.7%, which is below the council mandated 2%. The report before you today speaks to the reserve fund, and let me go over that briefly, then I'll ask if you have any questions. As part of our financial process, the controller is responsible for closing the books on a year-end basis, and through that process, she identified a reserve fund cash balance of $232 million. After adjusting for transfers through the budget process, we had an available balance of $142.8 million. This figure was $40.9 million greater than what we anticipated during the budget, when the budget was adopted. This is driven in large part by the larger than anticipated reversions from our city departments. As you know, at the end of the year, money that's not spent reverts back to our general fund. And that figure, that $40 million figure, was in large part due to the hiring freeze, but also money saved in, let me see, if you went to the second page of our report, it identifies where the money came from. We speak to the hiring freeze, but also unspent appropriations that we provided in the budget for some of our employee settlements. There is also significant savings in our liability claims account of $13 million because of cases that are still pending, that have not been settled yet. The one thing that I want to highlight today, there's $13 million in our liability claims account that carried over from last year, and that's as a consequence of cases that have not been settled yet in litigation that's currently pending. What I wanted to highlight today is that on an overall basis, our revenue receipts were off by only $750,000, which is approximately 0.02% of our original projection. But yet within that, the shortfall for our sales, business, well, it's our economically sensitive revenues. Your sales tax, business, hotel taxes was off by nearly $89 million. But yet in our property-driven taxes, the documentary transfer tax, property tax, real estate taxes, it surprised us. Revenue far exceeded our original projection. But I wanted to highlight that point, not to highlight where we missed, but the fact that in our economically sensitive revenue categories, they are highly volatile. And even now, we know that no one has called it a recession, but in our first quarter, and I'll speak to this later in our financial status report, we're already seeing about a 5% drop in some of the economically sensitive revenue categories. We're seeing about a 10% drop in hotel tax alone. And even though some folks, some of our economists are saying, well, yes, it appears we're recovering somewhat, their prediction when we put our budget together was about a 3% increase in all categories in the local economy. UCLA revised their projection to only half of 1% in the last month or so. So you see the volatility, and because of that, and because of some of the demands, and I'll speak to some of those demands now and later in when I talk about our financial status report, I would urge this council to be extremely prudent in not authorizing or not appropriating any additional funds from the reserve fund. I'd also urge that we have equal prudence because of in our fiscal activities because of what is going to happen at the state level. We know the state is going to have a deficit of approximately $27 billion next year. And we have strong concerns that that deficit will have a serious impact on our budget and our finances. In this report, in the reserve report, we are recommending transfers that we're recommending some budget adjustments that are necessary now, and you'll hear other budget adjustments to meet some shortfalls in a number of budgets. Now, we start detailing that information on page 4. It talks about $1.6 million for municipal facility projects, about $3.6 million for other city facilities, which includes money that's in our Capital Finance Administration Fund for city facility improvements, such as improving the elevators here in this building, some roof repairs, and some other infrastructure improvements. We also have money that's needed to finish some of our Rec and Parks capital projects, specifically your Imperial Courts, the Allegan Sutton Recreation Center, and then some money for the Prop K program management function. That's basically it for the reserve fund. I can get into more detail based if you want me to go over the specific recommendations, but they're pretty clear starting with page 6, and it speaks to the amount of money we need to move from our various accounts into department's budget to meet their present needs. Are there any questions?
What departments do you have to move money into in order to meet the budget needs where there is an anticipated shortfall? That's very important and critical.
Well, I think, and we could go right into that report if you like. In our financial status report, this report has movement into some of our, principally our capital programs, whereas in the financial status report, we identify shortfalls in specific departments. Departments like, concerns we have in the police department because of, it's a good news, bad news scenario. The good news is that attrition has dropped considerably. We have less officers leaving our police department. And hiring has improved immensely. The personnel department and the police department has made incredible improvements to our recruitment process. And right now, for the first time since last year, we're not having a problem filling our academy classes. The current budget provides for 350 officers, and yet at our current hiring rate, it appears that we can hire as many as 585 officers. Well, that's wonderful because we need more officers in our police department. However, it will have a budgetary impact of approximately $20 million. We have money in the reserve fund to address that shortfall, but yet that's only one demand on our reserve fund this year. There are other demands. In our convention center, there's a shortfall of revenue of about $2 million. And I probably should stop it, just finish the reserve fund right now. If we can move the reserve fund report forward, then when I can come back and talk about our financial status report, I'll provide you more detail on where we're at with individual departments. Would that be okay?
Okay.
Mr. President, I just thought that was it was essential to have a detailed report in reference to our reserve funds, because we'll be requested, I'm sure in the very near future, to start appropriating money from that fund for specific projects. And Mr. Fukuoka has already said be somewhat hesitant in doing that because there is an anticipated shortfall as relates to the amount of monies that are required by statute, by charter, to be remaining in the reserve fund, which is 2%, and we're below that already. So I just wanted to put that on the table, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Other members wishing to be heard? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll on this item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 15, called special by Councilmember Garcetti.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 15, colleagues, refers to DART, the Domestic Abuse Response Teams. It's still Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and while this refers to a motion for a 30-day report back, which has been approved and moved on to public safety to identify funding for the DART teams, I again want to underscore that some of these teams have stopped working. There are other ones that will stop at the end of the year. And as we look at public safety in this city, it's so critical to have these teams rolling out with police officers to help women, children, other folks who are in domestic violence situations extract themselves from that. It saves us money, and it's the morally right thing to do. So I hope that when we come back with some ideas of where the money may be for this, that we can continue to have one of the best programs in the country, one of the most innovative programs in the country combating domestic violence, and that we can have your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Other members wishing to speak on item 15? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 16, called special by Councilmember Holden.
I believe item 16 was called special by Mr. Pacheco. Is Mr. Pacheco with us?
Mr. President, colleagues, Mr. Garcetti and let me give you a little background here. This is a road, Roderick Road is a road that was on my council district before redistricting. We have been working on this project, and now it's in Councilmember Garcetti's district. What I wanted to do, colleagues, is amend the current report because we believe fully that the Department of Transportation can give us a full closure on Roderick Road. I know there's representatives here from the Department of Transportation. I want to tell you that the only body and the only department that's had a challenge with this issue has been the fire department, because they have a policy of about 700 feet in the nearest opening when it comes to a cul-de-sac. I have been speaking with my colleagues, specifically Councilmember Miskowski, and we have been talking about how this is a prudent policy under most circumstances, but the community here is very comfortable and understands the policy and the merits of the policy, but believes that for improving ultimately their public safety, that a cul-de-sac or a complete closure of Roderick Road should be done. So I want to amend the report and move that the Department of Transportation be instructed to provide design options which may or may not involve acquiring land in the surrounding area to complete either a cul-de-sac or other recommended closure for Roderick Road in conjunction working with the community, the Department of Sanitation, and other department that requires access through that road. So I'd like to move to amend the report. I'm sorry, in addition to the current recommendation, I'm simply asking that we overrule the department's determination that a cul-de-sac is not appropriate. I will ask that we pursue that and direct them to design that as an option, and would like a report back in 90 days to the Transportation Committee, and simply ask that as they pursue the temporary closure, or partial closure, I should call it, that it be a temporary mechanism and not a permanent partial closure, that we use temporary measures so that we can fully execute a full closure at a later date once we look at some designs from the Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you. We have an amending motion by Mr. Pacheco. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Garcetti seconds. Chair recognizes Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. I too rise in support, and I understand this policy, and I think it's a good one generally, but in this case, I too cannot support as a permanent solution the bump out. I think if we can do something where that temporarily we have something up there and we move towards the full closure and we move towards the cul-de-sac, whether it's the standard round one or, as Councilmember Miskowski taught me, the what's it called? Hammerhead. Thank you. Knew something to do with a shark. Hammerhead bump out. I think that we have some options to do that. So I fully support Mr. Pacheco's motion. I know that he had run with us. I know my staff has worked very extensively on it, and members of the community I've personally met with on this. And I think this is what's most in line with what the community's wishes are, and respectfully second the motion and ask the appropriate departments to work towards that solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Other members wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none, let's, I don't sense any objection to the amending motion, so let's consider the matter as amended. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Item 16, as amended, is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 17, called special by Councilmember Holden.
Mr. Holden.
President, there's some members from the department here, I'm sure. This is going to be easy and...
Can I ask you to press your button, please? Oh, we got it.
I guess you need these additional people. Just tell us why very quickly, and then we'll move on.
Please proceed. Mr. Holden, you're up to be heard.
Why you want these people? Why you want to lift the hiring?
Mr. Holden, your question?
I asked him, why do you want to lift the hiring freeze for these people?
All right, the question is posed by Mr. Holden. Mr. Maldonado.
Manuel Molinero, I'm the general manager for the Recreation and Parks Department. We're asking for a hiring, lifting of the hiring freeze because what's ended up happening with the department is we're unable to address a lot of the needs within the Recreation Department as far as being able to mow the turf on a timely basis, replace lights and ball fields, staff our recreation centers. It's gotten to the point now, because of the hiring freeze, that this reduction in workforce is becoming critical and making it extremely difficult for us to meet the needs of our community and provide the quality services that the Recreation and Parks Department needs to provide for the residents of Los Angeles.
All right. You're asking for 8 recreation facilities directors? Yes or no?
Correct.
45 recreation coordinators?
Correct.
38 gardeners and caretakers?
45 and 38. Keep going.
And 13 light equipment operators.
And 13 light equipment operators. Do you have anybody working in that department at this time? Doesn't sound like it.
We're very, very thin. The people that we do have working are having to put in a great deal of overtime, and it's very, very difficult for us to meet the needs of the users throughout the park system.
My question to you, how many recreation facility directors do you have right now in place?
Working within the department?
Yeah, currently. Anybody know over there?
Yeah.
120, so we have about 90 working. We presently have about 90 people working for us.
Recreation facility directors, you mean?
Yes, correct.
And you have, how many recreation coordinators you have currently?
The correct answer would be not enough or too many. Nothing in between.
I apologize, I'm having to do some quick math here.
Mr. President.
Approximately 150.
Oh, I see. So this will be 150, 200, 20, you're hiring 25%. You go up 25%. You're that much of a show. Are you budgeted for these people at this time?
We are budgeted for these positions.
At this particular time?
At this particular time.
So therefore, you are not getting to the reserve fund?
No, we're not.
You are not? All right.
All right.
Well, fine. That's the point I'd like to make, Mr. President. The other point I want to make is that at Rancho, the bulbs are out, put them in. And at the Baldwin Hill Park Rec Center, at the baseball park, bulbs are out, put them in.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We will respond.
All right, Rancho and Baldwin Hills, the light bulbs need replacing. And
I will jot that down,
when the
Mr.
sun
President.
sets this evening. All right, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Labange, how many light bulbs do you have out at your parks?
Well, let me look at my list.
All right.
I'm sure it's very few. I just want to acknowledge the department director, Mr. Molinero, for his great work. and I just rise to support our Rec and Parks Department. We can't get to the point where our own city facilities are contributing to this broken window syndrome, where if we're not showing that we care for our parks, and those of us who are struggling just to find soccer fields for our young people to play on, if they don't have the lights on, if the grass is not being taken care of, if we're not sure that the playground area with sand is safe, then we're going to be deterring our families from enjoying what little we have for those areas that have very little. So I just want to thank you for stepping up, taking the courage and the bull by the horns and saying we need this. I know in a very tight situation here, but we need our oasis. We need our points of relief for those neighborhoods who are basically dealing with this gang issue. We don't have any place for them to play. So I just want to thank you for stepping up and making sure we have the best, most functional and cleanest facilities that we can have in order for our families and our children to enjoy. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councilman Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. The chair now recognizes Mr. Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Mr. Reyes, it was so well said. We must take care of our parks, and you're doing that, and it makes no sense to have a facility if it's not clean and safe, well lit, and cared for. And we all have to tighten our budgets in this time. But what is one of the most important things that we have an opportunity to share in the great honor of representing people is our public parks. I just wanted to call all of us to support this here and to work closely with the park department so it gets up to speed. Sometimes we get a little ahead of ourselves. You gotta remember the people who do the work, the gardener caretakers, the electricians, the staff that takes care of the facilities. It's real important to make sure, and this action will help close that gap. So I wanted to stand and thank that.
Thank you. And again, I would like to stress that these are all entry-level positions. These are the positions that make those parks function, make those parks look pleasant for the community, and it's extremely important that we be allowed to have these positions in order to maintain them at the standards that the community expects.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Holden, do you need to be heard again? Okay, I believe we're ready for a vote. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved.
Thank you.
Next item, please. Forthwith on item 17.
Item number 33 was called special inasmuch as there's a card from the public.
Item 35 and item 36 are on the same subject matter. We have one public speaker card on each of these items. Melrose Larry Green, you want to come forward and speak to both 35 and 36, please?
Good morning. Good morning. I'll be very, very brief. I'll reserve most of my comments for public comment, but I do want to talk very briefly about 35 and 36. They're wonderful items. These are motions to rename portions of the city different names. Item 35 is to rename the area bounded by Figueroa, Vermont, El Segundo, etc., Athens on the Hill, which I think is wonderful. It will instill community pride. It will result in, oh, you look very familiar. How are you? And you look like you're on TV. You look familiar. Yeah, how are you? Big fan of yours. It will instill community pride. It will increase property values. And it's really, and I don't want to start any big tumult around here, but I think that the words Watts and South Central have a very negative connotation in some people's eyes, and they're beautiful communities. The Blue Line's a wonderful thing, and I really like the idea of renaming that section of town Athens on the Hill, provided you name my area North Hancock Park. That's supposed to be a joke. I live on Las Palmas. Thank you. Thank you. I live near Bancroft Junior High School. And item number 36 is the same idea, but the area of the Mid-Wilshire District around Ardmore Street out to Santa Monica Freeway to be named Melrose Hill. Before I lived on Las Palmas, I actually lived at 437 North Ardmore, and we never really had a name for that area. Calling it Melrose Hill, same thing as 35. It'll instill pride in the community. This will do, and it doesn't cost a lot of money either to make the sign. It's a wonderful idea, so I support 35 and 36, and then we'll talk some more at 40. Thank you.
Thank you. This closes the public comment for both items 35 and 36. Unless there's an objection, I believe we can take these matters together. Chair recognizes Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Thank you, Melrose, Larry Green, for saying really what I was going to say. And this particular one, 35, Athens on the Hill, will do exactly what you said. It will create pride, it will improve property values, and more importantly, this was a name that came from the grassroots community. They've been waiting a very long time to have this happen. They actually have been trying to get this designated since 1993. So it's been a long time coming, and I was afraid it was going to get caught as we do try to move forward and create a city policy on this. But I really wanted this to happen for them because they've really waited a long time. And I want to thank the 2 community members that came down here today in support of this. And I hope you will agree that this is a good thing and that it really does give a community their identity that they've been wanting for a long time. So we're happy to do this, and we hope to have an unveiling of the sign when we get it out there on beautiful Athens on the Hill. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you heard that, colleagues. Larry Melrose Green endorses Melrose Hill. It's a beautiful thing. Now we have the official go-ahead. I'm sorry I missed you on Howard Stern this morning, but I heard you were on. You told me. The Melrose Hill Homeowners Association, Residents Association, is one of the most vibrant in the city. And if you've never been to this area, it has some of the most beautifully restored homes in the city from the turn of last century. Some beautiful craftsman homes, people who have taken years to painstakingly restore. Ed Hunt, who's the president of the Homeowners Association, has been working on this for a long time, and I know it's going to instill great pride in an area of East Hollywood that wanted to designate this. So I also, too, rise in support. We've got 2 great hills today, one Athens and the other one's Melrose, but thanks for your endorsement, Larry.
Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you, and Mr. Garcetti, it was an area that I had the honor to serve, and now you have been redistricting this area, Melrose Hill, and it's an absolute treat. Members and the public who are listening, if you're going west on Melrose from the Hollywood Freeway, take a right at Hobart and get lost in Melrose Hill. It's quite an interesting neighborhood. It's the 2nd historic district in the city of Los Angeles, following the Carroll Avenue Angelino Heights district. This designation will help bring more pride to the great part of the Hollywood area of Melrose Hill. So I thank you all for your support. Thank you, Mr. Garcetti, for mentioning Ed Hunt, who came here from Texas as an architect in the late 70s and really started to organize this neighborhood. He's well known in the community, and all the people on the block who've lived there a long time in this little unique area have such charm. It's a treat and one of the great many neighborhoods of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. Other members wishing to be heard? Members, we have items 35 and 36 before us. Seeing no other requests, Madam Clerk, please open the roll on both items. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those items are approved. Next item, please.
Item number 40 calls special for a card from the public, and also a substitute motion has been distributed to the council members.
Council calls forward Melrose Larry Green on item number 40.
That's right. Item number 40 is very important. This is relative to deploying traffic management personnel to facilitate traffic control on Hollywood Boulevard for a Revolution/Two Cops production, film production on October 21st through 23rd. Now look, I would love there to be films every single day. I live in Hollywood, and a lot of people, like Harry Truman used to say, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. If you don't like film production and show business, you shouldn't be living in LA or Hollywood. So I say this is great, and let's have it every day of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public comment for item number 40. Mr. Garcetti. Mr. Garcetti passes. Members, we do have a substitute motion on item number 40 circulated. Madam Clerk, please open the roll on the substitute motion. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That substitute motion is approved. Next item.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 45, called special by Council Member, Holden.
Mr. Holden, Item 45.
Right, the CAO is still here. He's going to give us a report, Mr. President, department by department.
Yes, sir, we're back. Before you is our first financial status report for this fiscal year. And I apologize, if I had the presence of mind, I would have asked that we combined item number 7 with 45, but that was then, this is now. Let me go forward. We, in our reserve fund report, you notice that we identified some potential budgetary shortfalls of approximately $66.2 million. Since then, since that report was prepared, the problems have increased to approximately 78.7. But let me emphasize, these are potential problems. These are not, we're not actually looking at real deficits right now. I was asked the question, are we looking at a reserve fund of 1.7 right now, as I stated in my earlier presentation? No. Right now, the reserve fund is in excess of 4%. The 1.7 could happen if the potential problems we identified in this report, in our reserve fund report, become true. If you notice in our financial status report before you today, we're asking departments to, and to the largest extent possible, absorb or address their shortfalls within their own department's budgets to achieve some savings through some, through continuing with the hiring freeze, to looking at the current expenditures, and then also what's very, very important is that we emphasize to all departments the importance of meeting their revenue targets. We have some departments who came during the budget process and presented some very, very aggressive revenue targets for the for items under their respective control, like Department of Transportation or Building and Safety and Planning and so on, Fire Department. It's important that each single department meets their target as provided in this year's budget. We, in this financial status report, I believe Councilman Holden has asked that we identified some of the problem areas, and I'll get into that during my presentation. One thing I wanted to mention, though, is that with respect to revenue, you'll notice that we're only 0.7% off the budget plan. However, as I stated earlier, we have concerns about our economically sensitive revenue categories like sales tax and business tax, utility and hotel tax. We're about 5% off a budget plan as following the first quarter. That may not seem like a lot, but that's only the first quarter receipts, and as you know, it's the information that we get in December, then subsequently in March, that will provide the basis for our budget next year, but also identify the how well we're doing with respect to our collection of revenue. Now, to get to Councilman Holden's concerns, we have in the report, starting on page 8, we've identified potential budgetary problems. I want to emphasize the word potential because there are a number of factors that could change the amount identified under this category on our report. It could be anything from the departments making internal adjustments to control their expenditures, but also some external there could be some external adjustments or influences that could either increase the cost or decrease the impact. Some of the problems include police recruitment. I mentioned that in my earlier presentation. We're looking at a problem between $20 to $29 million in our police department. Of that, there's $20 million for the additional officers that we may have in the department as a consequence of lower attrition and increased recruitment. There's also a potential deficit of $10 million in our sworn overtime account. Now, Councilman Zine's not here, but at an earlier council meeting, we were asked, our office was asked to contact the Superior Court to see if we could coordinate our activities to reduce police officer court overtime. We had a very, very good meeting with the supervising judge of the Superior Court, Judge Dan Oki, yesterday. It was myself, Royce Minkins from our Employee Relations Group, and Commander Dan Kenning from the Police Department. Judge Oki was very, very receptive to working with us to look at how he can change the scheduling of some of the courts and when our officers are subpoenaed, which will have a very, very positive impact on court overtime. Human resources benefits, we're looking at a potential deficit of $13.8 million. That's being driven by workers' comp. Fire department, I want to highlight some of the larger ones. Fire department, 7.9, it's in their sworn account. Sanitation, about 7.4, and of that is 4.5 in the private hauler fee, 2.1 in tip fees, and then some money for as-needed and overtime salaries. In the city attorney's office, we're looking at a potential salary deficit primarily due to a decrease in funding for the grant program, such as the CLEAR program, and that could be as much as $3.5 million. In the earlier report we had on your agenda today, we talked about money that may be needed, and it appears very likely it will be needed for outside counsel. That's about $3 million right now. There's another $3 million for pensions. There's $1.5 million for a FEMIS upgrade. That's your financial management information system. We have a system that was installed in 1986 that has a lot of challenges, and we need to replace that system. There's $1 million extra for the city clerk for the November election costs, and then it goes on. I mentioned earlier about the convention center and the reserve fund report, where we're seeing a shortfall of approximately $2 million in their revenue. The last major problem is with GSD building maintenance. In this year's budget, there was insufficient money given to GSD to maintain our facilities, particularly our new libraries that are coming online. That's something that we have to address, and we did so in this report. Are there any questions?
Yes, you talked about earlier being pleasantly surprised to learn that in the property transfer tax, it was much higher than you anticipated. And I think you got to think about why that's the case. For an example, people were paying more money for their homes. The interest rates were low, but that's ending toward the end of the year. So you can't anticipate that that's going to be like a straight line, that it'll be ongoing.
Absolutely, very good point, because in real estate, we were surprised.
You have a fluctuating market. Then and also on the bed tax, you said you anticipated more money, sales tax more money, a shortfall there, but it was made up by the property transfer tax. Now, I can tell you we're going to find ourselves in a bigger hole because transferring property is going to slow down. The shortfall that you realize now from the bed tax and other sales tax will even get worse. So therefore, instead of ending up to 2% reserve fund, you're going to have much less than 1.7 that you have aboard now with all these other deficits that are in place. Would you respond to that?
I want to emphasize the fact that what I went through was a list of potential problems. And it's important that we highlight that we do have these problems for the primary purpose of getting your assistance and instructing departments to do whatever is possible to address their own problems internally within their own budgets. Yes, you're right that the real estate-driven revenue sources, such as property tax or documentary transfer tax, is something that we can't count on every year because those properties only turn over so many times. And we do have concerns with respect to the economically sensitive revenue categories because when the budget was put together, we anticipated approximately 3% overall growth. The local economists have changed, and that was consistent with what the local economists predicted. Those from whether it's UCLA or some of the Jack Kaisers of the world. Subsequent to putting the budget together, they revised the prediction down from 3% to 0.5%. And so we know we're going to have some significant challenges with our economically sensitive revenue categories. What I also try to emphasize, and what we need to do through our budget and finance process and subsequently this whole council, is to demand that each department does whatever is possible to hit their own revenue targets. whether it's parking tickets or ambulance billing or building permits, every single department must hit those revenue targets. Otherwise, if we have a very, very diverse economy, we have a very, very diverse revenue base here in the city. There's no single revenue source that's over 25%. So we can't, if one has a shortfall, if we collect more revenue in another category, it tends to make up or balance that shortfall. But that's why it's important, because we know we're going to have challenges in our economically sensitive revenue categories. That's why it's extremely important that the other categories perform to our budget plan, such as departmental receipts. And right now, although last year was a surprise in the real estate categories, this year is still very, very strong, extremely strong. But you're right, it won't continue, but we need to be prudent.
Also, Mr. President, members, Mr. Fuchioka, we've gone through the quota system for the parking revenue funds, where they require the parking to go out and cite so many people, whether they need it or not. So we can't go with the quota system.
We don't have, I don't think we have a quota system.
When you said they should meet their goal, that established goal, that means you're encouraging the traffic officer to go out and write more tickets. And we got to be, whatever the violations are, that's what you write.
That's what they write. I'm not advocating nor supporting our quota
Very good.
system.
The other thing, Mr. Fuchioka, in this report, which is thoroughly done, I mean, you did a great job here. You talk about the airport security and the fact we could lose $10.3 million because we're providing additional police officers at the airport for security there. Is not the airport required to compensate us for the amounts of money that we spend to provide that security? So we should not see that as a deficit?
That problem is being worked out between the police department, airports, and our office. At the point we were preparing this report, because we didn't have a formalized agreement with airports, we had a concern. Again, that was under the category of a potential problem. Subsequent to preparing this report, it appears that problem is being addressed.
So we're not going to be losing $10.3 million
No, I
because
don't.
of that, sir?
Well, we'll still have some overtime concerns, because that overtime isn't related to just the airport. It's throughout the entire department. But with respect to the money and with that the staff assigned to the airport, we expect airports to reimburse the city for those expenses.
Now, in closing out, I just want to say, Mr. President, members, that in this report, you talk about the attrition within the police department. Well, now we have a new environment right here in that department, and you want to make sure that sufficient funds are made available in order to meet the program plan of the new administration. And I see here that there may be some problems, given the fact that the attrition is not what we thought it might be, that the officers are still in place, and there's a reason for that. And would you tell us, in closing on my time, why the officers are staying on and not leaving, other than the fact they say they like it around here? There's another reason which I think you're aware of for the benefit of the members of the council and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Holden.
I think there's a number of reasons. On an anecdotal basis, some hearing officers are excited about the new administration and the new change. On a practical basis, we've implemented what was called a DROP program, a deferred retirement options program. It's cost neutral to the city, but it has an absolute benefit to the officer if he or she decides to stay, enters in the DROP program, and then stays for X number of years. So we're seeing both the morale changes, the anticipation of significant improvements brought by the new chief of police, but also we have a JOB program. And the intent of the JOB program was to keep officers around.
Hold on. Mr. Holden, your time was up.
Okay.
I need to recognize Mr. Reyes.
The JOB program is a deferred retirement option program, where the person going into job, the officer going to job, would continue to receive their salary, and the retirement benefits, what they would have received in retirement is put into it's a tax deferred account. It's not getting two salaries, but it is an option that we developed and we presented through this council. It is cost neutral, it does not cost the city any money, but I think it's gone a very, very long way in addressing attrition and helping us retain experienced officers in our department.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fujioka, there was a time when there was a whole array of businesses throughout the city that should have had business licenses. And not until we started forming business investment districts did we realize the volume of collections that weren't occurring until we started organizing commercial corridors. And there are districts where you have a higher percentage of tenants versus property owners who actually have their business in their own buildings. And my question to you, because I haven't had a chance to go through the report as thoroughly as I should have, but have we seen a change in collections of business licenses that the city should be collecting every year? Did we do anything that allows us to recover that which is out there? Is there
There was an Assembly Bill, Assembly Bill 63, that was passed last year, which provides us the ability to access state income tax rolls to identify individuals who are paying business taxes to the state who possibly are not paying our local business taxes. Our Office of Finance, who has the responsibility for collecting business tax revenue, is working aggressively with an outside vendor to identify individuals who are on the state tax rolls for the purpose of determining whether or not they're paying their appropriate share of business tax or business tax period. We're starting to see some benefit from that effort, but it's at the very early stage. They've just started within the last about 3-4 months.
3-4 months. So
yes,
the assumption could be made then that there's a pool of entities out there that aren't paying a business license, and that's an income that should be generated for the benefit of the general fund and for the operations of those neighborhoods.
That's true. That's true, and that's the responsibility of our Office of Finance, who was created for to look at the revenue collection process, is working on that very diligently.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pacheco.
Mr. President, colleagues, I think Mr. Holden raises some very good points about where we are in the police department. And I think what we need to do at this point, Mr. Fujioka, and I didn't cover this during committee, so I'm not sure if I need to amend the report or just ask that you work with each department, but we need to start looking for more and more savings if we're going to absorb the extra officers, because it's going to be a multi-million-dollar hit. So, you know, if I have to choose between some of our competing needs in terms of different departments, ultimately, I personally will be putting a high priority on the police officers. So I want to make sure that each department knows that, whether it be Public Works, whether it be General Services, whether it be any other department that we need to look at for savings. So I'm not sure we need to amend the report, but I think just like we did right after September 11th, we have to start looking again for some real savings, not just feeling good about what's going on in terms of what we've done so far.
As far as the process we initiated over a month ago, we've asked departments to identify potential budget reductions, not only for the purpose of the planning next year's budget, but also to address the shortfalls this year and to address some of the concerns.
All right, and I know that various departments are under pressure to increase their staffing needs for regulation compliance. Can we look at that issue also in terms of how we offset that?
Yes.
All right.
We'll report back to your committee.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Reyes for a second time.
Okay, this has been weighing pretty heavy in my mind. When the new chief came in, he made it very clear, we have 9,000 officers, correct? We have 9,000. The city this size needs at least 18,000. Right now, the ratios, from what I understand, is that for every officer, there's 10 gang members. If you look at the total challenge we have in dealing with controlling crime. So we're talking about doubling the capacity and the presence of officers in the streets. Now, we know that for the past 10 years, there have been commitments to ranch up the police force. And Mr. CEO, can we get to a point in our dialogue, our discussion, our analysis, that we talk about what is the true cost of creating the intake process that allows us to move in a direction that truly reflects the volume that we need? I mean, is that discussion occurring? Is that something that council should be putting on the table for the chief of police and the mayor to look at? I mean, I think we need to start putting on the table what it really takes to do this. What are the true costs of dealing with the intake process, of hiring people who can qualify to be officers? The one thing I keep getting over and over again is that we get tons of applicants, but of those applicants, we get a very small percentage that can actually pass the test. So it just seems to me our mechanism of how we intake applicants, how we analyze and how we process needs to change. We have one police academy that's antiquated, it's very small. Right now we're dealing with new police stations, but the most basic element of absorbing and dealing with a volume of applicants and the cost associated, are we engaging? Is that on the table at all? Is it anyone's radar?
Our personnel department works closely with the police department on recruitment. And that would be something where we can ask them to come either to Personnel Committee or Public Safety to address that. There's been several studies that have identified the amount of money it takes to recruit an officer. There's also, it's recognized that the principal reason for the small number of individuals on a percentage basis successfully going through a recruitment process is because of the very high standards we have that we should maintain for our police department. But we can provide you that information. We're working with, we haven't had a sit down with the new chief yet, but I've talked to two of his key members of his transition team. And the process that he's going through now, he being the police chief, is somewhat similar to a zero-based budgeting process. He's literally looking at every single position in a department, which is something that hasn't been done in a very, very long time. And that in itself is, I think, is an exceptional step in the right direction.
Colleagues, the reason why I'm raising this issue is that in walking with the mayor and the chief yesterday, he made it very clear that this is the toughest challenge he's ever had in dealing with a police department. And he is asking, how do we coordinate our resources and work with the community in reinforcing our presence as a police force? But it seems to me, those of us who understand the limitations of term limits, that we need to put on the table the actual structure, the infrastructure that speaks to the true problem of not having enough officers and not having the mechanism in place, meaning the physical plant and the personnel to move people into the ranks of officers. And that's just something we need to put right in front of us and analyze in a manner that will be constructive in the next few years. So I thank you for your indulgence there.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Other members wishing to be heard on item 45? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 46, called special by Councilmember Holden.
Mr. Holden, item 46.
Mr. President, members, this has to do with an earthquake loan, and we faced with the problem of having to lose the monies that we've invested in this project or go and buy it out of foreclosure. We need an explanation on it, Mr. President.
Mr. Rudy Thomas,
Thank you.
or staff.
This is a matter in CD8, and appreciate Mr. Holden's interest in the issue. Let me simply offer the following explanation, if I may. What we are attempting to do is to keep the city from losing any more money than it would otherwise lose. This deal has gone bad. There's a foreclosure pending, and what we seek to do is remedy the situation such that we will be positioned to acquire. That is the Community Redevelopment Agency. You may wish to know that there is a facade program in this very portion of the Crenshaw district, and this is one of the buildings that could help improve the face of Crenshaw. And so this is a prudent, you might even say a strategic move on the part of the city staff, and I want to commend them for that, so that we do not further disadvantage ourselves in terms of putting our resources at risk, and at the same time reap the upside by causing this to be integrated into the revitalization that is facade program along Crenshaw Boulevard. And so I would ask that the council move forward with the item before us, as it is a part of our overall economic development and community improvement strategy and program.
Thank you. And then the staff is here. I don't know if that suffices, Mr. Holden, or if you have specific questions.
Like Mr. Thomas, I think he's going to move forward. I think that this detail and specific information, I think for my benefit, we want to hear.
Mark Johnson from the agency.
May I, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. Rudy Thomas, you just had a minute.
Remaining.
Mr. Holden is asking some specific questions of the staff. Let's
I was
proceed with
just
that
going to direct the
presentation.
staff not to make the mortal mistake of contradicting anything that I just said. Thank you very much.
In simple terms, we're asking authority to use program income from the CERLA program itself to participate in the foreclosure sale so that we can bid in and purchase the property. There's also an additional allowance for monies that would be used for continuing the repair and renovation of the building to put it into a marketable condition.
Mr. President, members, when I first got elected, CRA, they had some condos that they bought, they invested in, and downtown here, and we were required to sell at least a certain percentage of those condos in order to take advantage of the federal monies that's being appropriated for the project. Only to learn that the bottom fell out and the owner of the property walked away from it, and then the CRA, the city, was left holding the bag, and that property kept turning over, and ended up being nothing more than the giveaway program. You were familiar with that project down there. It was really bad news. And this particular one here, did you take the comps in the area? Do you know what the estimated value of the property is at this time? And when you bought into the property, knowing that there was a loan from SBA, which is about $240,000, when you put in $500,000 plus, you know, anybody could walk with that kind of dough.
We did commission an appraisal report back in 1999, and subsequently we've had a review appraiser updated as of January 2002. The range of values that are indicated in the appraisal report are in the neighborhood of $725,000 to $733,000.
Mr. President, members, I'm going to vote for this, but I must tell you that to invest this kind of money into a property that we don't know if you're going to ever get your money out, if you turn around and sell it, once you put the other additional money in, because you're next in line with SBA, how much do you think you'll get out of the property?
Well, using the appraisal data, we expect that the completed building would be worth at least $750,000.
Yeah, if you have a buyer. If you have a buyer.
Well, that's based on what the appraisal
Mr.
value.
President, members, that's why CRA has been in trouble in the eyes of the public over the years, because here's another example, in addition to the many examples that we've seen, and that condo project downtown, I don't remember just how many units it was. That was the biggest ripoff ever that the city has been subjected to. This particular project is a small project in order to protect the money that we already invested, according to Mr. Thomas. Then, of course, if we can get any of our money out of it, I guess it's better than losing it all. So to that extent, Mr. President, I will vote for it, but I think we should be mindful of the fact that these kind of deals should be watched very closely after Mr. Thomas and I leave.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Mr. Rudy Thomas, did you wish to be recognized again?
No, sir.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for the questions you raised, Mr. Holden. We had this in committee. I think this is going to be an important project to move forward. You know, the BBA is there at that building, so it's a very important Black Businessmen's Association community marker and institution to keep there. And as much as we can look at, and I've talked with the agency, we have to make sure we can protect that investment that is there. And I hope that we can have a clear vision of whether we want to use this for some other community need or whether or not we're going to be just looking out for the investment and trying to sell it as quickly as possible. Some of that will depend on the market too. So it is a little bit of a risk, and putting more in, say again? I don't recall the square feet. Do you remember the square footage?
It's about 10,000.
10,000. So it is available for quite a few things. And I think it's important to move on this too, because what we're going to have also in CD8, as Mr. Ridley Thomas goes on to the Assembly, is nobody there. And I think it's important, while there still is an elected representative, to move forward with some of the vision on this too. And then we'll wait new leadership to come in.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Seeing no other members wishing to be heard on this item, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 47, called special by Councilmember Holden.
Mr. Holden. Item 47, Mr. Garcetti.
Very much, Mr. President. Thank you. Rise in support of this item to extend the $2 parking, validated parking throughout Hollywood at our city-owned facility at Hollywood and Highland. I concur with the Transportation Commission that the pilot program should be extended. The new rates have generated new revenue for the garage. Although not as much as we would like, it is steadily building, and considerably more usage of the garage, which is critical for the entire area because more traffic means more business for the city. As you know, we're competing with West Hollywood, Universal City, Burbank, and Glendale are some of the closest areas. So more buying means more sales tax to support our vital city services. I also agree with Councilmember Bernson's comments from yesterday, however, that the proposed extension is too short and will not give us sufficient data to make long-term decisions. We need to see what revenue is produced by a full season of bookings at the Kodak Theater and with a fully leased mall. So I recommend that we continue the pilot until the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2003. I also think we need to think long-term about this garage, colleagues, and so I'd like DOT and CRA to report in 3 months and 6 months on the status of the pilot program and on long-range plans for the garage. Finally, the success we've had in Hollywood and all the tourists and special events and other folks that have come back to caused a lot of hardship for the community, especially those residents that are right around Hollywood and Highland. And I think for the immediate neighbors who lost some parking, who don't have parking in some of their apartment buildings right there on Orange, Orchid, and Sycamore, it's been particularly difficult. And I met with about 50 neighbors a month ago. We've opened up the garage for monthly parking for them, but it's still $100 a month. And I understand that DOT is reviewing monthly parking rates separately, but I do think that these residents who have really borne the brunt of the traffic and the impact of this development, which everybody wants to succeed and everybody's excited to have, should nevertheless warrant separate consideration. So I would also move that we set a flat monthly rate of $50 a month for residents in the immediate surrounding area of Orange, Sycamore, and Orchid between Hollywood and Franklin. And we can help DOT, which I know difficulties of implementing some of that. We can help you with our staff, perhaps even doing that implementation. We have a very extensive list of who those neighbors are, but I just think it's something that's the right thing to do for the community, so we'll work very closely with you to do that. So I'd like to move that. Thank you.
Is that a motion, Mr. Garcetti?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Mr. LeBlanc seconds. Chair recognizes Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. And the question I'm going to ask, colleagues, Councilor LeBlanc, Councilor LeBlanc and Garcetti, I had Transportation Commission over in CD1 the other night, which is really great. We had good turnout. And I asked them, where are we with our parking meter funds? And I got a blank stare. And I asked, does the department know? And I didn't get a clear answer. And so in the spirit of understanding where we're going and realizing that there's quite a few projects that were identified and slotted for some improvements through the meter funds that were in those respective areas, do we know how much is being spent, and do we have an idea of how much will be spent? Can we get an answer to that? Just to understand what is the nature of our dynamics economically.
Alan Willis from the Department of Transportation, Office of Parking Management. Are you asking specifically about Hollywood Highland right now?
Whatever you feel most confident in answering, that will give us a clear idea of where we're at and where we're going.
Okay. Right now, we are, in the 5 months since the rates were reduced at Hollywood Highland, we've been averaging about $440,000 a month in revenue to the Special Parking Revenue Fund.
What does that mean? We're spending it or we're collecting it?
That's collecting revenue to the fund. The expenses during that same period are averaging $675,000.
So we have over a $200,000 gap, and that $200,000 is coming from the Parking Revenue Fund?
Yes.
So that's how much is being taken out of the fund?
Yes.
From the whole city's
Yes.
revenue fund? Okay. How long will that last, do you think?
We are meeting right now with the retail consultants for TriZaCon, and we're trying to develop a strategy, a joint strategy for marketing that site and increasing patronage in the garage. And that may include also some adjustments to the rate structure that we currently have in place, so that we will eventually, as that project leases out, we'll get to the point where we break even and hopefully we'll make money.
So what's the total, as of today, that's been spent from the revenue fund?
We had a loss last fiscal year of $2.75 million.
On this one site?
Yes.
In 1 year, $2.75 million?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, you know, when the patient is ill, we got to know how bad the illness is and what are we going to do to cure it. So thank you for that.
Mr. LaBranche.
Thank you. I just want to ask Alan a few other questions here because on this issue. In the former days, former times, if you had the Wilshire Western parking meter fund, parking meter district, all the money stayed in Wilshire Western, correct? Former times.
I'll
Correct.
say yes.
Okay. All right, good. Wilshire, Alvarado, Wilshire, Vermont, San Pedro, Van Nuys, whatever. But now that is all in one citywide parking fund, correct?
Yes.
Good, okay. And now we try to, in our rates that we have, we raise a certain amount of revenue that we share to do this parking, because parking is the big issue. I know we're focusing on parking on this project, but parking is the, next to traffic, next to our personal safety and our family safety, and those are the citizens of Los Angeles, traffic and parking is the hottest issue that affects all people on this situation. So in trying to develop the funds necessary to build off-street lots, the commitment by the council at the time was to build this parking structure, which we've adjusted the fees to enhance the ability of the public to use it, correct?
Yes, and experienced almost a 30% increase in patronage.
So that was
as
a positive move. Will we, and a positive move till we go into the black as opposed to get into the red as we are in right now?
Definitely better than staying where we were.
Good, okay. Last question, where is the first parking meter in the city of Los Angeles? On Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood. All right, thank you.
Mr. LaBranche,
Deaton knew that, all right.
I don't agree that it's one parking fund. When we did Hollywood Highland, the numbers didn't turn out the way we anticipated, but we attempted to make sure that the parking fund monies collected in Hollywood would be sufficient to cover Hollywood Highland. The numbers didn't come out right, but my view is not changed from the way this thing was put together in the beginning, which it is by districts, because there is commitments of when you put parking meters in front of a business that you're going to do something to alleviate the parking problem in that area. And that is an area-by-area issue, not a citywide situation. So hence, I don't agree with transportation, and historically, as I made comments before this council, Gil Lindsay's turning over in his grave, and hopefully Yaroslavsky's listening, but that ain't the way it's supposed to be. And it is because commitments made to businesses And that's the way my office looks at this, not the way you just heard, just
Well,
so there's no
let me ask you a
doubt.
question. Okay, but I like that question too, because I do believe when you tell a business district, a Vermont Avenue business district, the money from that meter right in front of your store is going to go to help buy off-street parking, that's a positive. But how do we get back to that in the future?
Well, good, bad, or indifferent, most of the expenditures out of that parking revenue fund have been from recommendations in my office, and those are the way those recommendations are formed, and they will continue to be formed that way.
I think it's an area, Ed, worth looking at to see that, because it's nice to tell people the money you invest right in your neighborhood and the parking goes to help offset the parking. So that's another question on another issue that's real important. Thank you very much, Mr. Deep.
But we do support the extension to June 30th and think that we need to, this is a very serious problem for us. It obviously did not come out the way we planned, and we're trying to alleviate the problem by trying some experiments.
A citizen told me the other day, I got a little more time, that in some cities they allow they don't enforce the meters to 11 to give people a free shot at encourage some different aspects to encourage people to use the local businesses. So I just think it's real important we look at that issue separately at this time, but move ahead of what Mr. Garcetti suggested. Thank you.
Members, let me remind us that although the policy issues being raised are relevant, the specific matter before us relates to the Hollywood Highland parking facility. Ms. Misikowski.
Thank you. I guess whenever I hear this being talked about in the historic context, I want to get up and just sort of reaffirm some of that history. Mr. Deaton is right, and the reason that commitment to the areas, to the districts, the parking districts where the meters are, came in because we, the city, initiated in concert with the retailers and business members in those areas, sort of a penalty, if you will, of saying that they would have meters in instead of other business districts where you can park in the street freely. There is nothing to pay. So where there was a commitment with the city and the community to put in meters, each one of those meter districts, and Mr. Reyes, you can get the report from the Department of Transportation off-street parking section, which has each meter area, which has a specific number. In Van Nuys, there are 5 or 6 of them. It's like, district number 681, district number 682, and you see what is coming to that area, where the parking lots are, how much revenue comes in every year, and how much is spent just to sustain the meters or to sustain the lots that were paid for by the meter revenue, and then to look at the future plans. And there are projects in that meter district which talk about the future plans, whether it's a parking structure like there is for the Van Nuys City Hall to accommodate the new Van Nuys City Hall. In years past, there was a lot of, there was the first merger, which is instead of having each meter district stay alone, it was each meter district in a council district stay together. And then there was sort of future borrow against the entirety of the fund to do some bigger projects now, where those bigger projects were expected then, because of the generating of new revenue, pay back the fund, again, relatively in the proportion of where it had come from. That's where things got a little bit stranger in the accounting in terms of what those older, and that's why Mr. Deaton talks about Council Member Lindsay and Yaroslavsky, because that's where there were a lot of expenditures with an expectation of coming back. In this instance, I have no problem, because when we did the Hollywood and Highland parking project, we said the revenue would pay for itself. If it didn't, the parking revenue from CD 13, all of the parking meter districts in CD 13 would cover it. If that didn't, then the entire parking revenue would, until something was made whole and made better. So this project with new strategies is to bring it up to what the first expectation was that wasn't first met, but ultimately needs to be. But you can look at the accounting in each district where it comes from, but you can also look, I think there are only 7 council districts, maybe 8, in which parking meters exist at all. Some of the areas of the city do not have any of their business members paying for this, and so there was always this sense of fair share. And in fact, I think there was a lawsuit that we settled over how we should be using those funds to sustain the district. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that commitment to the communities where this is done, and look to see in the future if there's other ways to expand it, explore it, but keep it whole in the sort of the greater accounting book in the sky over the number of years that it's been generated.
Mr. Holden.
Mr. President, members, Mr. Deaton is absolutely correct. And there was always the intent and the understanding of the legislative body that the monies collected in those respective districts, those from the parking meters, stayed in that fund, that district fund, where they could provide additional parking structures, et cetera. I remember downtown